Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Dinner and Dialogue. Our topic tonight is women in the 95th District. Again, I want to say thank you for joining us. We have a very dynamic group of women who will be joining us tonight, elected officials, professionals in education, and we do have a doctoral candidate from Saginaw who is going to be joining us tonight. So I'm so excited to dive into these issues tonight. So let me just begin by introducing one of our first panelists tonight. Our first panelist that's going to be joining us this evening is Jamie Forbes. She's councilwoman for the city of Saginaw, and she originally hails from Reese, but as soon as she moved to Saginaw, she got to work, and I'm proud to consider her a good friend. So thank you so much for joining us this evening, Councilwoman.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And then we have Miss Karen Lawrence Webster. She's joining us as well, as we know that she is a Delta College board trustee, and she's also the president of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, this evening, Miss Karen. It's good to see you. All right.
Good to see you, and thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. There we go. We got our audio worked out. And we also have, we also have long-time serving Saginaw County Commissioner representing portions of Birch Run and also Bridgeport, Commissioner Cheryl Hatzel. How are you doing
today? Thank you, Cliff. Thanks. Yeah. Long time. I like that. I have been a commissioner for a long time.
You have put in a lot of work and a lot of years of service to Saginaw County, and I know today was an extremely busy day for you. Opening back up at the salon. So for you taking the time tonight, I greatly appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, Cheryl. And then we also have Andrea Pugh Kelly. She was born and raised in Saginaw. She attended Saginaw Public Schools from kindergarten through high school. She is a recipient of the Bill and Melinda Gates Millennium Foundation Scholarship. She went on to earn a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science at Florida A&M University, and she continued her education at the University of Michigan School of Public Health, earning a Master's of Public Health. And she is currently, we talked a little bit offline about this, but she is currently a doctoral candidate of Environmental Science at Florida A&M University, studying environmental justice and policy. Andrea is very active in the community in a number of organizations, from the NAACP to Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She's an advocate for urban education, environmental justice, and social equity. So thank you so much. She's also, I have to get this plug in there because my grandma, she tells me every time, she's a graduate of Saginaw Arts and Sciences Academy. That's a school that's very close to our heart. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Andrea.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And then rounding out our panel, she'll be joining us a little bit later, Miss Cynthia Reyes. She's an academic advisor at Delta College. So she will be joining us a little bit later in our stream tonight. But I just wanted to say thank you so much to our dynamic group of panelists for joining us tonight. And we're going to delve deep into some of the issues within the 95th District. So let me go ahead and pose this first question. What does it mean to be a woman in Saginaw? And I will start with Jamie Forbes.
I mean, that's a really broad question. What does it mean to be a woman in Saginaw? I think that we are a little microcosm of so many of the issues that we face as women in this country and around the world. And I think that we see that play out in so many ways, both on the basis of age and race and gender. We see all of that play out. And so I would like to think that here in Saginaw, we have a really collaborative environment. And I think that that I, for one, have been that has really benefited me, that there have been a lot of folks that have been doing good work here in this community for a long time. And they are definitely open and welcoming to to new folks, especially in nonprofit land, which is dominated by women. So although I think that we see all of these big issues play out perfectly in Saginaw, so I think that that's what makes us special to analyze some of those things and see where the solutions might be.
Jamie, just a quick follow-up question. I'm going to ask this to our panelists as well. What do you think is the most pressing issue facing our community now? Well,
I think that the last month or so has displayed that that racism is alive and well in this country, and it is alive and well in Saginaw for sure. And I think that what we've seen go on in the last couple of weeks shows that we must face this problem together, and no longer push racism that we see play out all over under the rug. That we have got to address it and to do what we can to minimize its effect until we can change the hearts of those that perpetrate those crimes and those implicit biases, all of those things, right? We can't necessarily legislate that humanity, but we can certainly minimize as much as we can, and then hopefully really take those issues of looking inside of ourselves and analyzing where racism resides in our own heart, take action on that. So I would say that although this is this is an issue that impacts women and men equally, I think that we have got to face this screaming issue that's in front of our faces right now.
Let me ask the same question to Karen Lawrence Webster.
So the question was, what does it mean to be a woman in Saginaw? It depends on if you're from Saginaw or if you're an implant. I can honestly say that there has been a difference over time, but there's definitely opportunity. But my experiences have been observing women being marginalized. And some of the examples that I'll use are with some of our elected officials. We've had at least one female elected official to the 95th district, right? But I think you can actually see that because of that, her being a female, she may be not potentially invited to certain tables, or if she's invited there, it may be marginalized. So I think we have opportunities, but I think also we have to look back at our history as an African-American female in Saginaw. Some of the mentors that I see as African-Americans would be limited when it comes to like the county level. It would be Marie Davis would be the only African-American female that I can recall that has been on. I know Bridget Braddock, but I'm talking about historically. And then at the city council level, we have Joy Hargrove. And I'm talking about African-American females who made a great impact on our community when they were elected officials. But it was an attempt to marginalize them and their voice. And the other question you asked, Jamie, was some pressing issues. And I think one of the pressing issue, the most important one, is a quality education. And in Saginaw, we must admit that there's a great gap. When I'm talking about Saginaw, I'm talking about Saginaw County in the quality of education that is delivered and that's received by our children. And number two would be mental health. The third one would be, we live in a food desert if you live in the inner city, and then leadership. And I'm not talking about necessarily the elected leadership, but the appointed leadership. There's a vacuum in what I'm not hearing. I've been in mourning personally for the last 2 weeks because of all the national news, but I don't hear our appointed leaders who really drive the day-to-day activity within our municipalities and our education systems. Their voices are kind of silent right now, and they need to step up and lead.
Thank you for that. That was great. Let's go to Commissioner Hadsall.
Well, I tell you, I got a hard act to follow with these two. I'll tell you, it was great what they said. But to be a woman in Saginaw, I'm very proud of our community. I'm very proud of the changes that have taken place in the city of Saginaw. I'm very proud of what's taken place in the county. I think we are viewed differently today than we were 10 or 15 years ago because of our crime statistics going down now. We're not number one anymore, and everybody doesn't look at Saginaw as the crime capital of the world. So, it's really nice. It's great to be a part of this community, and I'm very proud to serve. Part of the 95th district is in my commission district, so I'm assuming that's why Clint invited me here tonight. But yeah, I think we have a lot to offer. We do have the arts. We have our medical community that we need to be very, very proud of. And, we have a great educational opportunities here in Saginaw that we need to take advantage of. I have a couple of pressing issues too. And I have the advantage of being a hairdresser, and I get to listen to my clients every single day. And I try to be a good listener. And the first thing that I hear from most women is the access to affordable health care. I still hear a lot, I can't afford it. I can't afford to have this done. I can't afford to have this done. I can't afford to go to the doctor. I can't afford to take off work to do this. And it mostly comes from women. And we still have a lot of work to do with healthcare. We have a lot of work to do. We've done a lot, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely.
And I think the other pressing issue, and I'm going to really bring up something now because I'm what you call an out county person. I'm an out county commissioner, and I bring a different perspective to the table. My community and the community that I represent doesn't always look favorable on the city of Saginaw, and they hardly support millages for the city of Saginaw. And I think that's a real huge issue that I wish some of us at this table could mend that, so that the out county and the city of Saginaw, we shouldn't be working against each other. We really shouldn't. I look at this community as an apple. This whole Saginaw County is an apple, and our core is the city of Saginaw. And if our core of our apple rots and goes away, then the whole county goes away. So that's why we have to support you, and that's why we have to work together. And I think that's a huge issue on the table.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cheryl, for that. Let's go to Andrea.
Yes, so I would say that being what it means to be a woman in Saginaw County means to be a woman of resilience. Saginaw has gone through a lot of different changes over the years, over my short lifetime, but definitely moving from being a post-industrial city, and the changes that we've seen in the past decade is definitely would take a lot of resilience. I would say that being a woman of Saginaw County also reflects that, surviving different economic challenges and things like that would definitely reflect that of being resilient. The two most pressing issues, I believe, are education and environmental injustice. So I was born and raised on the east side of Saginaw. I graduated from Saginaw High School and the Saginaw Arts and Sciences Academy. So every day I got to see the difference in access to education and a quality education play out. I started off my mornings walking through metal detectors, and I ended my day, at SASA, which is a totally different environment with access to advanced placement courses and things like that, in which we did not have that on the east side of Saginaw at Saginaw High School. So I would definitely say that is a major issue, that we don't see equal access to quality education playing out across the county. The second thing with environmental injustice, as I mentioned, Saginaw is a post-industrial city. With that being said, there are various economic and health impacts as a result of that. We see that played out in childhood asthma and lead poisoning rates. And we see that also played out in instances such as the coronavirus pandemic. When you have these facilities placed in communities of color and low income, that shows, number one, that there is a lesser value placed on these communities. And they also have various impacts on our health, as with the coronavirus, having different conditions that are a result of living in these communities make it harder for your body to naturally even fight off of something as wild and just far thought of as coronavirus. So this is something that impacts us every day. That also plays into access to quality food. As Ms. Lawrence Wester mentioned, we live in a food desert. I have a car. However, looking at my census tract, the majority of people within my census tract do not have access to a car within their household. So where are they shopping at? Drugstores, Dollar Tree. So that is a major issue that we see played out, but I would definitely group that all into environmental injustice.
Thank you so much for that. That was great. We're going to get to some other questions here. I want to encourage all of our listeners who are tuning in. If you have questions for me or members of our panel tonight, please feel free to put those in the comment section below. But I want to touch on something in regard to health. An effort to protect our physical health during COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic. People are now feeling more isolated than ever. So what are some of the things that you would like to see when it comes to elevating mental health concerns? And I will start with Miss Karen Lawrence Webster.
So the question is, due to COVID, what would I like to see done to help us do what again, Claire? I'm sorry.
To elevate some mental health concerns with everybody being confined for so long, an effort to protect our physical health that takes a toll on our mental health. So this is an opportunity, I think, for us to, to have that discussion when it comes to mental health, because I know that's not always an easy conversation to have in our community.
First, I want us to recognize that the majority of our community has been traumatized. I'm just going to say the majority of our African American community has been traumatized. So going through COVID has allowed us, to me, take a step back and breathe and understand that all of the demands on life that we once knew, we don't have to put them back on us after we come out of COVID. But the community as a whole has to be assessed and has to realize that we have been traumatized before COVID. Okay. We have mental health. We have some traumas that have not been resolved. And when I think about Milton Hall, about what's going on in the world today, we haven't resolved the Milton Hall trauma. We haven't resolved the Bowles and Howe trauma when we have police officers who went into our community years ago when they were off duty and took two Black boys and put them in the back of their truck and took them to the other side of town because they were accused of saying something to a Caucasian female. So we have experienced trauma that has not been resolved. So the first thing in order to come out is we have to realize that we're in it. And then the community, our leadership, has to reconcile some things, because we're not going to come out of it on the other side unless we admit to what has happened to us and somehow have some form of reconciliation.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councilwoman Forbes, just if you need me to repeat the question at any time during our discussion tonight, just let me know. But we're talking about mental health concerns and elevating those issues within our community.
So I know that that we've heard so much about the implementation of telehealth through the COVID crisis. And I think that one of the major opportunities of this whole thing is that we've been shown that telehealth can be super effective, that this can really open up a lot of opportunities, not just for folks that live close to medical resources, but maybe have challenges with a car, just as Andre mentioned, but also folks that live in rural communities, and there are very much less providers available. And I think that this, they've been trying for many years to get telehealth moved forward. There was a lot of apprehension about it. Well, now we've been shown that it's a great opportunity. And so I hope that a lot of the learnings of this will be continued, and we'll be able to have access to more telehealth going forward. And then, of course, I just think that as it comes up all the time, we have to do our best to reduce the stigma of mental health concerns. And I think that really is an individual process, right? That is just us being open about to our friends and family about our own struggles, and that they should not feel self-conscious about seeking help themselves. I know that's just a really basic one, but I think that that must be a mantra, that we are more open about speaking about this important topic.
Absolutely. And we know that access to telehealth resources in our rural communities, especially within the district, is an issue. It's one that I worked on with Saginaw Public Schools, trying to gain internet access for our students. But that problem is compounded once you go a little bit further outside of the district in the rural community, because there's just not access there. So we have to increase that. I do see another panelist has joined us, Miss Cynthia Reyes. How are you doing this evening, Miss Cynthia?
I'm doing well. It's nice to be here with all of you.
Wonderful. It is so good to see you. We're just asking a few questions, and I want to encourage everyone who's listening to our panel tonight to go ahead and put those questions, comments, concerns in our chat feature below, and we will make sure that we get to them. I did want to just have a quick question, another question about health. One of the things I would like to discuss in Michigan is our infant mortality rate. Last year, the March of Dimes gave Michigan a C for our preterm birth rates. Our maternal mortality rates are higher than the national average in the United States. Is the most dangerous developed nation to give birth. And when it comes to maternal Black health, and Latinx women have a more negative birth outcome than their white counterpart. What needs to be done to address this, frankly, health crisis issue? I'm going to ask that question to Andrea and then Miss Cynthia.
So I think we really need to put more attention into addressing the cause of a lot of these mortalities. We have SIDS and things like different conditions like that. However, there might be more deeper issues that are leading to the infant mortality rate, whether it be lead poisoning or any other toxicant that could be contributing to this. We have to address that issue, but we also have to address medical bias and medical racism. That is a longstanding issue that we have in this community. Well, not in this community, in this country. And so we have to look at how that is playing out on a county level, on a city level. How is there any trainings or anything that are being conducted to kind of work towards eliminating some of those biases? However, as we keep mentioning, you can't train someone's heart. You can't train our policy the hatred out of someone. So these are real issues and real ways that we see racism played out in many different facets of society. So with the syphilis experiment, we saw where Black people were offered free healthcare, and yeah, they got syphilis for free as well without being told. So we have a lot of systemic issues to address within the medical system in order to move forward with addressing very specific issues such as infant mortality. But I would definitely say we have to focus on what are the causes of these specific or the specific causes of that contribute to infant mortality within the county.
Thank you so much for that, Andrea. Let me just ask Miss Cynthia about that question that we were posed, because the United States is the most dangerous developed nation to give birth when it comes to maternal Black health and Latinx women. They have more negative birth outcomes than their white counterparts. What needs to be done to address this health crisis?
Well, I strongly believe that our young mothers and our first-time mothers need to make sure that they have early preventive care and that they understand how important it is to take care of their health, make sure that they're moderating their eating habits as well as parenting. I mean, we have classes that helps to prepare them for the birth of their baby, whether it's going to be natural or in other facets, but we don't have enough that also helps them to learn how to maintain themselves as parents, taking on that responsibility, and then all of it that comes with it, because there's a lot of resources out there in the community. And I guess I'd have to say, from our community perspective, I mean, I believe it's throughout the United States as well, but here in our Great Lakes Bay region, I've noticed that there's so many different resources that are available out there in the community. We have so many different agencies that come together. We're going into the schools, middle schools, to different variety of different community events to help educate our community of learners, our young parents, our first-time parents. So that is very important for them, for us as a community, to help educate our people, so they understand how to take care of themselves, and then also how to prepare themselves for the responsibility of caring for their baby, and also understanding some of the health ramifications that come about when they don't understand, because it is frustrating to have a young baby. It's also a beautiful time, but if they don't really truly understand the responsibility that comes with it, the patience that they're going to need, and also understanding the medical care that's necessary for their baby, to make sure that they're understanding the well-being of their child, how well they're taking care of their child, and working closely with their healthcare provider. And that's part of educating our community, so that they understand the importance of both of those facets, because it's important.
Thank you so much. Of our panelists, are there any resources that you all would like to bring up or mention tonight for some that might be struggling or have struggled with maternal health here in Saginaw? If you do have some of those resources, Andrea, if you had any resources, or Jamie, you could put those in the chat feature as well. We just want to make sure that we're providing as many resources as possible. Even offline, we can always add into the comment section if some come across. So we want to make sure that we're linking folks to resources and getting them everything that they need, especially when it comes to maternal health. We're going to shift a little bit to labor and the economy. And I'm going to ask this question to Commissioner Hadsell, because I know that she is a local business owner. And I think that fostering business ownership is critical in ensuring a sustained economic growth in our community. But as a business owner, Commissioner Hadsell, what are your thoughts on what should be done to help foster business growth for women in Saginaw County?
Well, to correct you, I actually sold my business.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, it was great though. It was I owned it for 13 years.
Oh, wow.
And there are many, many, many resources here in Saginaw County. We have one that's called Saginaw Future, and it's our economic development arm of our Saginaw County government. And they have a whole system. They have a whole thing for women who want to start their own business, women who want to be in business. And that's what I would definitely push people towards. They were very, very helpful. And I'll give you an example of this right now, because of what we've gone through with the virus. Is a lot of small business owners are really, really struggling, or they were really struggling, and a lot of them didn't have access to the federal loans, or they got turned down by the federal loans. But we had a lot of things right here in Saginaw County that Saginaw Future put together, and they got small businesses in Saginaw County, not necessarily owned by women, but a lot of them, and they got them money within a week. And that's amazing. Nobody ever gets anything like that. But if you filled out the right paperwork, and by Friday, you could have had money by Wednesday. And the girl I work for now, she's a brand new owner. She only owned the salon for 3 months when she got shut down, and it was very disturbing to her. And this grant and this loan has helped her to make her payments and keep her business open, so that we could open today. And it was all from right here in Saginaw County, something that we have access to, which is called Saginaw Future.
Wonderful. Thank you. We actually hosted a small business roundtable, and we spoke a little bit about that. And I know the city of Saginaw does have some resources that are available. I spoke with Ms. Kana Franklin just the other day, and she said, listen, next week we will have some more information that's going to be coming out. She was kind enough to join us on a previous panel, Small Business Roundtable, with some of our local businesses. So please be on the lookout for that. That will be coming out very, very soon. I wanted to ask a question.
Clint,
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So, of course, I have to give another perspective here, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so what we see at Delta College, some of the reasons why females don't enter into the classroom as frequently as they should is because of transportation and childcare service. So I'm going to also suggest that is probably some, well, not the transportation, but the childcare service may be a hindrance in some of our African American females not taking advantage of some of those entrepreneurial opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I want to shift a little bit to childcare. And I know we spoke a little bit about this offline because it is a glaring issue, especially on top of COVID-19. And that personally affects my family as well with childcare. That's one of the barriers for our families is access to affordable childcare. What do each of you think that we can do to ensure that our families have adequate and affordable childcare opportunities here? I'll ask Ms. Karen.
Okay, so I'm glad you started with me.
Yeah.
I think, and Monica can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at a point in our history at Delta College, we had a child care.
I went there.
You were there?
I was a student there, yes.
Okay. And so we have educational facilities who are equipped to educate people on being child care providers who also have child care needs. And we also have hospitals who have employees who have child care needs, and they have a great opportunity to educate people on how to care for children as far as their health, the health of children. So I think we have the tools in Saginaw, but we just need to kind of partner together to make things happen.
Yes, Ms. Cynthia.
Well, I'm going to share it from a different perspective as well, because I've had many students explain to me the process of getting into any of the daycare programs here in Saginaw can be very lengthy. There's a lot of documentation that's necessary for them to provide, and they have difficulty in some cases of accessing that documentation or have no documentation. And they're trying to work or trying to seek work, and some clients that I've worked with have also shared with me that it only happens maybe in the beginning when they're getting the beginning of their benefits. They'll have to complete this like bridge program that helps them to learn how to do their cover letter, resumes, seeking jobs, and so they can have childcare during that temporary time. But there's other time that they need to be able to look for jobs, and so it's going to take time, but sometimes they're not able to access the childcare that's necessary because there's all this other red tape that gets in the way of, and there's other documentation. I just wish that I understood where there's more processes that could be streamlined to help our young mothers and young fathers who happen to have custody of their children seek those services. And if there was an agency that would provide clarity in making that a little bit more accessible and easier to obtain.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. That's wonderful. I do have one thing I wanted to talk about because Michigan has been placed 20th in the nation as it relates to the pay gap. For every dollar that a man earns, we know that a woman only makes 78 cents of that same dollar, which is equivalent to just over $11,000 per year. So I wanted to know, in each of your roles, have any of you ever experienced the pay gap issue that we have within the state of Michigan? We can start with Jamie.
So, I was really thinking about this when I saw these questions, and I can't say that I can be sure whether or not I've experienced the pay gap, because often it is completely prohibited for staff members to discuss pay amongst themselves. And so I think that most folks feel as though those conversations are really not allowed, and they wouldn't take that chance. And so I can't be quite sure if I've experienced it. I would say that statistically, it's probably it is probably the case, but I can't quite say for sure. And so I would say that, how can we increase transparency around that so that women who are experiencing a pay gap can pursue more information and justice, hopefully, about that. But I do agree that probably all of us on this call have experienced it at some point.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask that same question to Andrea. And just a quick follow-up question on that. Do you have any advice for young women who may be listening on how to hold their employer accountable?
So I actually do not know of any situation in which I would have experienced that. But also to say that honestly, all of my positions have been either an internship or a fellowship or something in which the pay is standard across the board. So I really I don't have any personal experience with that. But one thing that I would say is we have to build confidence enough to be able to know what we're worth. And if you feel as though, going into a job that you have room to negotiate a salary or things like that, we definitely have to be providing students, especially coming out of college or high school, the communication ability to be able to market themselves in a way in which they can kind of navigate through some of those challenges of actually negotiating what you're worth.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that. Well, let's pivot to action. I'm going to ask Ms. Cheryl and Ms. Karen. One of my top agenda priorities is an increase to the minimum wage. Do you ladies feel that our state legislators are being aggressive enough when it comes to increasing that minimum wage?
I absolutely think they have not. And I hope that when you do get to Lansing that you will take that up, because I think it's very important. I'm not afraid of it. I do have one employee and I pay her much more than the minimum wage because I think she's worth it. And I don't think anybody can live on minimum wage.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Commissioner Hadsell. Let me ask Ms. Karen Lawrence Webster, when it comes to increasing the minimum wage in the state of Michigan, do you feel that our state legislators are doing enough, and are they being aggressive enough?
Well, I don't think they're being aggressive enough, but I also don't think that they have educated business owners and the public on how increasing minimum wage could favorably impact the entire economy. And so I come from a labor family, and my dad was a major union guy. He was the benefits coordinator for Local 455 at the Malibu.
Okay.
And he said that if you have an employee that can't afford to buy your product, you are eventually going to go out of business. And so in Michigan, we have to think about what is our product? What do we want the residents of Michigan to be able to afford financially? And if the minimum wage is insufficient, Michigan will go out of business.
And I just wanted to ask a quick follow-up to Jamie. Let me ask this question: What do you think that we can do to close this gap? What is within our sphere? And I think Ms. Karen kind of touched on it a little bit with education. But is there anything else that you can think of that we could do to close that gap when it comes to pay inequity?
So some of the things that I think have come up here and there over the years, I think advocating for STEM programs and union apprenticeships in schools would have an impact on that pay gap. I also think that just to build on what you said about the minimum wage, that we see the legislature actually taking the opposite steps in terms of earned paid sick time and raising the minimum wage. There's been these ballot proposals, the collections of signatures to get something on the ballot in both of those areas. And the legislature actually took a much smaller bit of action during that collection period, which then nullifies the wording that is that's part of those ballot proposals. And so that is we wonder why people are alienated from voting, but I think that this is one of the reasons. So I think for sure that we need to work on a more robust earned paid sick time that's mandated across every employee in Michigan, so that if they have something come up, that they're able to address that. And it's women who are in the position to be able to take on those family challenges, and so often that ends up impacting their careers and impacting the wealth gap. And then of course we have to pay tipped workers an amount that's closer to what we pay everyone else, because often they are really impacted by the economic downturns as well. And it is such an incredibly low amount. It is terrifying, and we must do better, I think. And that would really impact women to a larger degree as well. And so I think that those are some small things, but these are like quality of life issues, right? This is just so that people can have the dignity to support their families, and that they're not discriminated against because life happens. And I think that those are just a few of the ways that we can try to bring that number closer to equity.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Councilwoman. We're going to shift a little bit to audience questions. We have numerous questions that have been coming in since we've been on our live stream. So the team will just go ahead and put that up. One of the first questions is, growing up in Saginaw, things have changed so much for us on the east side of Saginaw. Loss of businesses such as banks, grocery stores, restaurants, department stores. Who do we have?
Why do?
Oh, why? Okay, there we go. Why do we have to go to the west side to shop? People would not come to the east side to shop. We need to attract businesses to the east side. I definitely agree with that. I was just going down the Genesee corridor the other day and seen many businesses who did not make it from recovering from COVID. But I think it highlighted an issue that has already been here. I have a business plan on clintbryant.com that would help 1,000 new startups within the state of Michigan, which would be less than 4% of the governor's allocated ask. So that's one of the things I think we need to do, because we know when we have small local businesses in our community, we're going to frequent those businesses and they are going to thrive. And that's what we need to see all along the Genesee Street corridor and further on and throughout our districts. It's inequity is what we're talking about here. So we have to level that. But I want to ask that question to our panelists. Let me go to Ms. Karen Lawrence Webster.
So I don't know which comes first, but the city of Saginaw on the east side has not had a major housing development in years. So of course, businesses, they need people to patronize them. So we need to focus on housing development, which would bring people, which could support businesses on the east side of Saginaw. We have to be intentional. We have a Saginaw County School City Liaison Committee. And one of the things that I often wonder is, do they talk about survival? How's the core going to survive when we are not building up the core? We have major vacancies in vacant lots in Saginaw that need to be rebuilt. So if I were a business, I would think about that first. Who's going to support me? Are there homes? Are there people walking? Is this a well-traveled area? So I think we need to talk about housing development, school, and having quality schools in those communities, because people don't want to live in areas potentially where there's not good quality schools, and then businesses will come.
Thank you for that. That was wonderful. Let's get another audience question on the screen. This comes from Kimberly. How you doing, Kimberly? Thanks for joining us tonight. As a parent, my concern is education. Each schools did the best I think they could when this virus hit. Each district isn't the same without the funding they receive. Each district isn't the same with the funding they receive. With the fall school year not far away, my fear is children losing education and more. So when they come from schools with less funding, no matter how children learn in the fall, they must learn. They must have the same advantage no matter what school they go to. Plus, not all kids learn the same. Can't have uneducated children. I definitely agree with that. Resources has been something that we have been grappling with for a very long time, not only in Saginaw, but all throughout our district. So we have put an education plan together. Having worked in Saginaw Public Schools for over a decade, I've had the opportunity to be a custodian and a substitute teacher, a school bus driver, and we see those inequities all the time. We know that our students need more, they deserve more, and that's what I've committed to in being your candidate for state representative. Let me ask Miss Cynthia that same question from Delta College. And it comes to losing. Oh, I think we got her on. We might have her on mute still. There we go. Oh. Well, we will come back to that. We'll work on audio with Miss Cynthia in just a minute. But I know we do have several other audience questions. But let's talk a little bit about criminal justice. That's one of my top priorities in my platform. Our community is going through a shift as we transition from anger and frustration and pain into action. Our road to healing is long, but there are some tangible things that we can do. And I would like to ask our panelists tonight, what would you like to see done? Let's start with Andrea.
I would say that criminal justice is really broad. In the wake of recent incidents, as far as police brutality, there's a number of things that I would like to see done, including obviously as a result of George Floyd, the ban of the use of chokeholds and knee holds as an acceptable practice for police officers. We're hearing a lot of discussion around defunding of the police and what exactly that looks like. I keep saying that's probably not the best word. Probably should not have used the word defunding, but definitely looking at reforming the police. We have police being overworked, answering to a lot of calls that, probably aren't even within their training. We shouldn't have police responding to situations in which they simply are not trained to handle. So we see across the country in which we are having a lot of police departments reformed in a way in which they're not answering calls that should be addressed by a mental health professional or something like that, or if it's just a matter of there's a homeless person outside of a restaurant that might not necessarily need a police officer, but it might need that person might just simply need resources. So we see a lot of these situations escalate very quickly and in situations that just don't need police maybe to begin with. So definitely looking at what reforming police departments and to make them more of an integral part of the community. I know growing up, we had a community police officer that would just drive by and check on us. That's not something that I see now at home. We have the Michigan State Police in our community, who's definitely not intertwined within our community. I've been followed home multiple times by the helicopter. So definitely looking at just ways to restore community throughout the criminal justice system and really paying attention to, once again, local elections with prosecutors and things like that. And
Thank you for that. Let's see if we can get Miss Cynthia. Can we get you off mute? Let's try. Okay.
Clint,
there we go.
Clint, I have to talk about this, right?
Yes, get in there.
So as a city resident, we have city police, we have county police, and we have state police. We're over policed in the city of Saginaw. And there's no way that we can expect for them to know the community in which they're policing. So instead of the state police policing, we need those funds and hire local City of Saginaw police officers. Now let's talk about training. So Delta College, we're responsible for training police cadets, right? But what type of training are we seeing? Do we have the right people? Do we have any female trainers, any minority trainers? Are they from our community? So are the trainers from our community training cadets to be sensitive to the people that they're going to eventually be policing? We have a lot of work to do in this area. And so defunding to me means reallocating.
Right.
So you take that state money and even you take some of that county money, because we don't need, I'm sorry, Cheryl, you know, Michael's my husband, but we don't need people who live county sheriffs who live in Birch Run or Chesaning roaming the streets of the city of Saginaw. We need people who are from our community or who are willing to intertwine or learn our community, policing our community.
All right, Miss Cheryl or Jamie, did you guys have a follow-up at all?
Yeah, I have a few ideas. I think I've been so lucky to hear so many great ideas about what we might be able to take action on locally. And some of the things that I've been thinking about are body cameras at the county level. So here in the city of Saginaw, we just moved a resolution to begin working on the formation of a human rights commission, which would include, it could be on its own or it could be in conjunction with a police oversight committee. The idea that we tried this once before, but how can we bring more power to that committee to give them a more ability to have a say in any sort of police brutality situations? How can we report stops and searches and arrests in a database so that we can use some analysis to decide whether or not we're having abnormal contact with certain parts of the population. And just on the data side, I think that that's really powerful. We could talk about the rules for escalation, making sure that every option has been used before we consider using deadly force. I just think there's a lot of great options out there, and there's lots of communities that have done this really well. And so I think it's a chance for us to really learn from their past habits to see what is going to work right for Saginaw. So I just think it's an exciting time to think about what are the things that we need to be looking at to improve our situation here.
Commissioner Hatzel. Oh, we got you.
Karen,
Okay,
I do appreciate Karen's statements, but I'm going to go back to what I first said when we opened the show and say, you know, because you're a deputy and you live in Birch Run does not mean that you don't know the city of Saginaw. And I think that we need to learn how to work together, not separately. We need to work all together, and all the crime in Saginaw County needs to be lowered. One thing I'm going to share with you too is one of the reasons that the crime went down in the city of Saginaw is when Governor Granholm many years ago brought the state police to us. She's the one that was responsible for that, and that's when our crime statistics went down, is when the state police were there. Our number of calls for service in our 911 center come from the city. And that's why the city needs the police. They need the service there. And I don't think that we need to, you know, segregate and say you have to be from the city to be an officer. Or I think we all need to work together. And one other thing that we provide for everybody in the county is our sheriff department has the detective bureau. So if there is a crime, our detective bureau does most of the work on that. So that's why I so support that we work together and not carve it all out separately.
And what we all can agree on tonight on this panel is the fact that the state of Michigan is not properly funding our municipalities, period. They're just absolutely not funding our municipalities. And I think that the previous administration in Lansing used that as a scapegoat by providing more state police instead of providing the financial resources for us to be able to train our own officers within the city of Saginaw. So I think that is a glaring issue as well, that our municipalities, whether it's state or at the county level, are just not being funded appropriately. And that I know that we can definitely agree on that. Let me just ask another quick question we have that has come up from Miss Lisa. And she says, how do we encourage more Saginaw youth to take advantage of skilled trade educational opportunities, most of which pay above the minimum wage?
So within our schools, we have to give them the desire while they're still in school. So back in the day, we had Saginaw Tech. I think that was the name of the high school, Saginaw Tech High School. And they started learning skilled trades then. So if we want our children to aspire, we have to start early, giving them those tools.
And we're talking earlier than even middle school, because middle school, they do give them some hands-on opportunities to do wood shop and more wood shop, but there was some other skills I believe that we were introduced to a little bit earlier. But we also have to have them understand that those professions are respectable, and they're going to make a good earning. Just not obtaining your college degree to get out there, get your credential, and get into like an office profession. Delta College is, touted and well known for occupational certifications. And so I just want you to know that we have a very strong relationship with Saginaw Career Complex. We have quite a few different opportunities for students to earn articulated credit. The students are invited in 9th and 10th grade to come and check out the Career Center. We have student groups as young as 5th grade that come out to Delta College to come and check out our nursing, healthcare facilities, our skill trade center, so that they are introduced to that facet of the workforce. Because I know that students, we have to get them interested in learning and wanting to work in those hands-on types of careers. So it's very important for us to teach them very young. I'm at home and I'm always talking to my young grandchildren and the children that I'm able to impact, of the importance of taking a look at a lot of different of their what they like to do and what they don't like to do, and career exposure is really important. And I believe that Delta is really working on that immensely. And so is the Saginaw Public School District, because this past year, they've actually instituted a career advisor within all the high schools. And so I feel with that, they're really helping to educate our students with understanding how they're going to bridge those together. So once they're graduating from high school, they're understanding what it means by earning a wage and taking care of themselves, but getting into a job that they're going to enjoy working.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Ms. Cynthia, for touching on the career complex, because one of the calls that I had for them was to expand some of their programs, and one would be in agriculture. I think this pandemic has really taught us a lot about where our food comes from and developing our own food. This is one of the most unique things I think about our district, is the fact that M13 is a transportation gold route for agriculture, but we do not have those ancillary programs to support that. So if our students want to have a career in agriculture, I think it's important that we provide them that opportunity, especially when you have a transportation gold route for agriculture in the middle of a food desert. So that's one of the things that I'm focused on, hoping that we can correct within my term in the legislature. So let's go ahead to a next audience question. Ms. Jones, she says, I would like to see a viable grocery store on the east side. I have lived on the east side since 1959. I would like to obtain fresh fruit and vegetables and meats without having to travel for miles. I agree with that 100%. Ms. Jones, I was just in your neighborhood the other day checking on a few things, and it's very far. I know Councilwoman Forbes and myself, one of the things I did as a city councilman was ride the bus to understand not only what our transportation problems were, but about that food desert that we live in. And I remember seeing a mom, and she had 3 kids. She had ice cream, she had some milk, and a couple other things, and she was doing her best. So I know that's one thing that we have to see in courting not only developers, but let's see what we can do here at home as well. So let's just throw that to our panel as well when we talk about being in a food desert and having to travel for miles. We can start this question with Andrea.
Yeah, so this is definitely something, like I mentioned earlier, that I've experienced firsthand. I live pretty much in the Saginaw High community, so my closest grocery store was always the Kroger on Dixie Highway. So seeing that store close definitely changed a lot of things within the community, I would say. It was a local gathering spot on top of being our only access, closest access to a grocery store. You have a senior community that was built in the grocery store parking lot. So what is happening with those senior citizens now that they don't have that immediate access to the grocery store? Like I said, majority of our census tract does not have a car in their household. So now we see, residents in the city being bused to Walmart or being bused outside of the city to these different places. But that does not actually that does not actually satisfy the area being a food desert. So some things that we can do are provide funding to start local co-ops, which would be locally owned grocery stores within the area that wouldn't have a bias of or anything such as like, oh, well, we don't want to invest in a low minority income community, as we see with larger corporations that do have that bias. A lot of negativity false negativity was surrounding the closing of Kroger, in which that was an issue that Kroger was seeing, or grocery stores were seeing nationwide, in which deliberate disinvestment of grocery stores in communities of color and low income. But we were just told, oh, people were stealing too much. So now we have, people, like I said earlier, if you drive to the Dollar Tree on Dixie Highway, there will be people lined up on Saturday mornings to grocery shop in Dollar Tree. So what does that look like down the road when we talk about health disparities and things like that? If we're not able to feed ourselves properly, then we'll see other negative health impacts down the road, whether that be play out in mental health or physical health. So I would definitely say that finding small or chain grocery stores that are willing to come into Black and brown low income communities is important, but also investing in local small business or coming together to provide funding for a local co-op on the east side is very important.
Absolutely. Ms. Karen or Jamie, you guys want to
we definitely need it. I don't know how to make it happen, but we definitely need to address Mr. Jones' concern.
Absolutely.
I think that just to repeat what we heard from Andrea, I think that it's about creative solutions, right? It's not about, we're not going to get a Meijer on that in the middle of the city of Saginaw, but how do we think about some other alternatives, like a co-op type situation? So my day job is I'm director of external affairs at STARS, and this has been something that we have thought a great deal about. And we've pursued a lot of great opportunities for focusing on grocery store access for seniors, for low-income folks. How do we, equip a vehicle so that we can hold lots of groceries for each individual? There's been a few other grants that have crossed my desk that I think are really exciting. Sort of a mobile farmers market. If we can't get folks to the store, how do we get food to them directly? Sort of a farm share idea is another idea that's been thrown around. I think that there's a lot of sort of outside of the box ideas that would work really well in Saginaw. And I think it's just a matter of sort of the right place, right time, and the right funding opportunity. I think that there are some things around the corner. I hope there's been a lot of exciting conversations, and so I hope that we'll be able to make progress on this soon. But I totally agree. This is not at all ideal, and it's having a huge health impact on our families, and we must do better.
Clint, I have a point from another aspect, okay? I did not grow up in the city of Saginaw. I grew up out here in the country, and we grew up with a garden. And we had a half-acre garden, and we canned, and we made everything work for the winter. And I would like to see community gardening. I think that would be awesome. Detroit is really doing some spectacular things down there with community gardens. I know we've had one or two, or maybe we still have them, attempts in the city, but what better feeling is for somebody to grow their food and preserve their food for the winter. I'd like to see you try to bring more community gardening. We have a lot of lots. We got the area. You know, I think it would be awesome.
Absolutely.
Detroit is phenomenal right now, what they're doing down there.
That was one of the things, Commissioner Hatz. I'll get right to you, Andrea. I was working out a partnership with one of the food service vendors with Saginaw Public Schools, in addition to our SEIU local, because we have a community garden behind our Union Hall. And it's amazing when you see whether it's a Girl Scout troop or different volunteers who come over. I was at the office earlier today, and there was a mom that was sitting there pulling weeds with her son. And it's just amazing. So one of the things that I wanted to do this year before COVID had struck us was to bolster up our community garden, but also to talk about preserving food. My mom is a consummate canner. She cans at least twice a week. And what we do know is that when we get some of these some fresh vegetables in, that there's, you have to use them immediately because they will spoil. So one of the things that, and we'll probably see this in the future, is that partnership come back with our food service vendor for the district and also the H.M. Boyd Community Garden, is to talk about how we preserve that food and keep that food. So whether it's dehydration or whether it's canning, because there's nothing worse than seeing hundreds of pounds of produce that may come in from a farmer and to see that all go to waste. So we need to educate our folks and teach them how to cook with a lot of carrots, or how to use rutabaga and incorporating that to our regular meals, and what we can use to add those into different things. Let me get to Andrea, because I know she had a point.
Yeah, so I'm definitely an advocate for community gardening. However, once again, an issue that we have in post-industrial cities such as Saginaw, Flint, and Detroit is the viability of the soil. All of the deposition from the plants and things like that settle into the soil. So I remember the reason why I got involved in environmental science was because of my aunt, but also because at the time there was a lot of studies surrounding lead on our playgrounds. So we also have to be careful in educating people and how do you go about community gardening? Because you don't want people planting in toxic soil and eating toxic vegetables. And something that we saw in Detroit, which we wouldn't want to see happen here, in which I know of one incident in which it has happened, is that you have people in their communities taking over maybe a lot that's next to their house and putting in, a lot of time and effort and money and resources to growing a community garden and restoring the soil quality. And then the city or the county, whoever comes in and says, you know what, actually, you don't have the right to do this. We're going to take over this land. So there's a lot of issues surrounding community gardening. And while it is a good resource, it is not, something that can sustain a community And I actually wrote a report comparing Flint to Saginaw as far as access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And if Saginaw were to have a lead crisis at the scale of Flint today, then we would be in a much worse situation. As Flint was addressing access to fresh fruits and vegetables long before the water crisis happened, whereas here it seems like we're really focusing in on just getting people buses to bus them out to Walmart or whatever, but not actually investing in putting fresh fruits and vegetables in these communities, and also providing educational resources on how to sustain a healthy or more nutritious lifestyle.
Thank you. All right. We do have a follow-up question that is coming from Alicia. And she says, unions have been eviscerated in Michigan because of right-to-work policies. Most young people don't know what a good union job even is. Amen. That's a field that I work in every single day, and we have seen just decimation when it comes to the rights of workers and collective bargaining. We know that our public employees are always on attack, even up until last week. We've seen the Civil Service Commission implement some new rules when it comes to joining a union and access to union membership and having to renew that every year. But I just wanted to ask that question amongst our panelists. If we could get that question back up on the screen, that would be great. Just talking about unions being eviscerated in Michigan because of right-to-work policies. What are your thoughts when it comes to most young people not knowing what a good union job is? We can start with Commissioner Hatzel, and then we'll go to Ms. Karen. I can see Ms. Karen's ready.
One of the worst things that ever happened in the Michigan legislature was the right to work it was a dark day, the day that happened, believe me. And it comes before us at the commissioners level several times a year. And I grew up in a union household, like Karen said she did. I knew what it was like to, have my father work for the UAW. He had a good retirement. He took care of my mother in her years. And our young people, they don't know what that's all about. They really don't, because of the unions bashing and all the things with the unions. But that has got to change. That we got to change that around in Lansing, Clint. And it can, if we get control of the legislature, and things can change and things can be different with that right to work issue. So I know we're running over here, so I will give up the rest of my spot to Karen.
Okay.
Well, I have some mixed emotions because I come from a union background. Our young people don't know about unions, but also I hear on the other side that we have young people that don't really have a good work ethic. So I think we should probably work on that first. But when it comes to unions, I've been on all sides. I haven't been in a union before, but I've negotiated contracts. I've seen where unions have got in bed with owners. So what we have to understand is that the reason you have unions is because of distrust between employees and employers, right? And so the union busting comes about easily because the distrust is like all around. You have people who go into unions who distrust the administration of those unions. So I think it comes down to just understanding why we have unions and then going forward. I think we can still have good wages, retirement benefits with or without unions if employers just come to the table with integrity and honesty. And then just FYI, Delta College faculty and staff have unionized for the first time. So this is something that you may think is not popular for people to unionize, but it is still, organizations are still going forward with unions.
Absolutely. Councilwoman Forbes.
So I too was raised in a union household. I think that a couple of the ways that we can change this is to participate and vote and take back the House in this next election. It's very important. great candidates like Clint are running across the state, and we have got to take it back. We're doing a little better because we have Governor Whitmer in the governor's seat, but we need to take back the House too, and that's really our only shot to change this on the state level. Separate from that, I think that we have wonderful unions around here that are super active and are really trying to recruit consciously and think about how they can get the word out about the opportunities to take with their union. I know that passing the millage to support the career complex is a big part of that. I know that there'll be a lot more space for unions to get involved in students there, and so I'm excited to see how that pans out over the next few years. Already, what I've seen that school do with that funding is humongous, and so I can only imagine what else will be added over the years. But there's the macro level and there's the micro level, but I think the most important thing for us to do is to vote and to educate ourselves, make sure that we know what's going on, because right to work was lost in a few seats, right? And it played out in this big way that impacted all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Councilwoman. And thank you so much to each of our panelists for joining us tonight. We try to keep things nice and tight, close to our time. So thank you for making the time. I know it's extremely busy for each of us as we're navigating through this new normal, and for you guys all to take the time to join me tonight. I greatly appreciate it. So thank you to each and every one of you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Clint.
Absolutely. And I just want to encourage everyone who is tuned in. If you want to go ahead, you can follow me on each social media platform at Clint Bryant MI. That's my social media handle on each platform. And I also want to encourage you, if you want to look for more information, go to clintbryant.com, or you can text Clint to 22999. You also can request a yard sign. We have several hundred yard signs that have already been placed throughout the 95th district. And to request your yard sign, you can go to clintbryant.com with the /yard sign. There are many other places and things that you could be doing, but for you all to tune in tonight, it means so much. So good night, everyone. Please be well and stay safe.